lead investigators, Detective Chief Inspector Mr. Peter Stableford, will provide updates on the two recent murders which occurred, the most recent being last evening. Following this, we will provide you some images of the suspects from last evening's shooting, which you would be able to use for your various platforms. We'll email that to you henceforth. Commissioner.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much. Today, two families are now mourning over the senseless and violent loss of life. On behalf of the Bermuda Police Service, I express our condolences, thoughts, and prayers during this difficult time. These are cold, callous, premeditated killings that are done without regard for life or impact on the community. I assure the public that the Bermuda Police Service is taking the action necessary to ensure that those who perpetrated these crimes are brought to justice and the families and the community get the closure they need. In a departure from the norm, I want to share some of the some information about the current violence that is affecting our community, comparing it with what it was a number of years ago to the situation that exists today. From an intelligence perspective, certainly pre-2014, there was a very clear delineation of gang affiliations. You would commonly have heard the names 42, Parkside, and MLB as the main contributors to that tension and violence that existed then. The police, like the community, had a very good understanding of who was beefing with whom and where, and certainly with whom, incidents would most likely occur. This is in contrast to today, where affiliations have become much more fluid, and there seems to be a greater number of factions that are willing to resort to gun crime to solve their disputes. These factions are also located in more places than that has been historically. The challenge in policing these tensions is that both the number of factions have increased, who is against whom has changed over time, and the locations where these incidents may take place also changes. In other words, the picture's just not as clear as it was before. So deploying police officers intelligently to disrupt and deter has become more challenging or difficult. We are committed to doing our part, and a little while later, you're going to hear some of the detail in terms of what the BPS response is to these challenges. This violence continues to claim the lives of our young Black males, denying them their rightful opportunity to fulfill their true potential. As well, it robs our community of peace, tranquility, and economic well-being, matters that in the midst of COVID are vitally important to us all. I urge the community to work with us to provide information on criminal activity that would assist in bringing the perpetrators to justice and take action to persuade those engaged in these callous acts to stop. Some who have information may have concerns. And I want to reassure those individuals, those persons who may be sitting on the fence out of fear, that we have robust measures in place to ensure your safety and that your help is kept confidential. Additionally, there is Crime Stoppers, 800-8477. And also, as I've said before, if you know a cop, tell a cop. The evidence is clear. It shows what can be achieved when we all work together to solve crime and deter violence. And I don't mean only in terms of arrests and convictions, although that is very important, as there are members of our community, gang members, who are bent on perpetrating violent acts. So arrest, catching, conviction is very important. But I also our working together provides our young people with the help they need to turn things around and hopefully, perhaps, not meet the finality of death or a lengthy period of incarceration. I and my team will continue to perform our duty, not simply because we're mandated to do it, but because we are vested in this community just as you are. Our children attend the same schools, play on the same sports teams, attend the same churches, and face the very same issues every time someone chooses violence as a means of settling a dispute. This affects us all. We are a small community. We must and can do better. I'm going to invite Chief Inspector Stableford to give an update on the crimes, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Daniels to come forward and share about the proactive work that we're doing in response to this matter. And then we'll take some questions.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to provide a brief update on the investigation into the two murders that have impacted our community this week. Firstly, Leger Franklin, who we believe was shot and killed Tuesday, the 5th of April, and found the next morning near Clearwater Beach in St. David's. So we continue to appeal for anyone who was in the area of St. George's and St. David's between 10:30 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. Tuesday, the 5th of April, to report anything suspicious they saw. And I would ask anybody in the St. George's and David's area that has home CCTV, dash cams, video doorbells, to please save the footage, because it may be of vital importance to us as we progress the investigation. Particularly for me, as I would just like to say thank you, because the response we've had from the community has been very, very overwhelming, and it has helped us direct lines of inquiry, and we are progressing that investigation. There's nothing specific that I can give you in relation to that at the moment, but the fact is that we do have information that's been given to us, and it has been helpful, and that has come from the public, so thank you. Secondly, the shooting last night. It was about 8:30 p.m. and it was in the car park of the Workman's Club on Cobbs Hill, where the community was enjoying a kite making and Easter event for families. The young man that was shot, I can confirm, was Shay Jennings. He's 24 years old, from Warwick, and he was shot multiple times. I'll provide a photograph that the family have given us after this news conference, so we'll pass that out. So again, we're asking the public's help for tracing the movements of two suspects who were seen in the area before Shay was shot on a white Honda motorcycle. The rider was wearing a red jacket and the pillion passenger a yellow jacket, and both had black helmets. So again, the rider with a red jacket, the passenger with a yellow jacket, the rider with a red jacket, the passenger with a yellow jacket, both wearing black helmets on a white Honda motorcycle. So again, people with home CCTV, dash cams, video doorbells, these are the things that they can check their footage again last night between 7 and 10 last night. And if they're seeing that description, please get in touch with us. So there's a few key points that I would like to make at this time, and probably preempt some of the questions that you may have. One is that at this time, we don't believe the two incidents are linked. The question of this being related to gangs is a line of inquiry that we are exploring as it relates to both murders, but it's still too early to be definitive, and we have to remain open-minded. I will not confirm how many times either young man was shot, other than to say that it remains part of the investigation strategy and that both were shot multiple times. We are waiting for forensic results on both matters, and that takes time to get the results. I can confirm that a person was arrested in relation to the shooting last night, and he is in custody at the moment. But again, this is less than 24 hours, and it's still too early to provide anything further. We have assigned separate investigation teams, and a family liaison officer has been appointed to support the family. But I'll pass over and take questions after Mr. Daniels.
Thank you very much, Chief Inspector Stableford. Now I'd like to invite Assistant Commissioner Daniels.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the media. I just first want to start by extending my sincere condolences on behalf of Bermuda Police Service to both of the victims' families. As I said before, this is becoming an unfortunate, reoccurring theme here in Bermuda, and it's something that we need to all work together to reverse. So first of all, I just want to take this opportunity to inform members of the community that this weekend's policing will look a lot different. In the wake of recent firearms events, we have created what we call a surge capacity. We've done this by maximizing our officer numbers, by redeploying staff, we've halted all of our training, and we've amended their duties. This will create a noticeable increase in patrols, visibility, and engagement, particularly in those areas that have been most affected by antisocial behavior, firearms incidents, and other violence. These resources will be strategically deployed by the on-call duty incident commander in an effort to target those offenders causing the most harm while providing reassurance patrols to the community. I ask those persons out and about this weekend and or traveling on our roads to exercise patience, as there are likely to be roving stop and road checks throughout. If you are making time, please leave home or wherever you are in enough time to arrive at your intended destination at the desired time. Additionally, officers have been directed to exercise their full raft of lawful powers, particularly stop and search under 315F of the Criminal Code, police powers of stop and search under Section 5 of PACE, and of course, search and detention under both the Firearms Act and the Misuse of Drugs Act. Gang violence in Bermuda is the same as in any other country. Young men violently targeting each other for a variety of reasons. However, what makes our small island unique is just that, it's small. Because of that factor, gang violence touches all of us, particularly Bermudians, as we are either related to or know someone in or connected to a gang. This problem is complex. There are no easy answers. However, the BPS will continue to work closely with partners, stakeholders, and the community to explore ways to improve our response to guns, gangs, and violence. In closing, it's appropriate for me to reassure the community that one murder is far too many. No murder victim is ever forgotten, and the Bermuda Police remains committed to ensure justice for all victims and their families. It is incumbent upon the community that we all stand strong, stand united, stand together, and support each other when faced with these events which destabilizing our society. Thank you.
Members of the media will take any questions that you have now. Please identify yourself and your media house before you ask your question.
Thank you, Carol Lindsay, TNN News. 26 showers laid on the tarmac last evening. I asked you, Commissioner, previously, are there indications that we have new firearms on the island?
So at this moment in time, because the investigations are live, we have to wait for forensic evidence to come back. We're not in a position to confirm that.
Can you explain the protocol? Because it was apparent there was some anxiety of patrons that were in the area at the property last night that the ambulance settled for a few minutes waiting for armed response. Can you explain that for those members of the public?
I am not aware of that detail. This is the first time actually hearing of that.
Explain the armed response. Explain the armed response. How does this operation go?
How does an armed response?
Because if you have an officer that's in the area and doesn't have a firearm, he cannot come in or attend. Or what's the protocol?
So we have some fairly standard protocols in place in terms of firearm response. So that immediately that comes to the intelligence, that comes to ComOps, and it's declared a firearms incident. Armed response units are dispatched to the area to make it safe, and other units would certainly come in there afterwards. But there's an immediate response of armed response vehicles.
Okay, one last question, and I'll pass it on. This incident last night and the incident 1 year to the day, are there any correlation?
That remains a line of inquiry.
Sarah Legan from the Royal Gazette. You talked about the fact that there are that these factions are sort of more splintered than they were a few years ago. Do you have any grasp on how many gangs or factions there are now?
So it is an ever evolving picture, and that's kind of one of the challenges is that before we had these very traditional concentrations in particular areas, but as a result of infighting that clearly started around 2014, they're just kind of splintered. And the reality is, of course, depending on the issue, depending on specifically who is in tension or at odds with each other, these alliances can seem to shift back and forth. So it is just difficult to say, whereas before there was very clear delineations. Now the picture is much more fluid.
Can you talk about what's motivating this violence and how much drugs is involved in that?
So traditionally we would talk about the 3 R's: respect, revenge, and revenue. Thank you. Respect, revenge, and revenue. And it would seem that those kinds of issues are still at play.
If you look at some of the comments online, there have been some criticisms of Pastor Leroy Bean, including from the mother of one of the victims. Do you believe that what Pastor Bean is doing is effective?
Absolutely. I can certainly personally vouch for the contributions that Pastor Bean makes, his ability to help diffuse some situations and generally work with gang members to consider alternatives to gang lifestyle.
Okay, so just one more. The problem persists with gang violence in Bermuda. It's been, at least a decade that this has been going on. Does something need to be done differently? Hewitt Brown was lambasted by many for talking about bringing in a US-style squad team. Does something more severe need to be done? And are you considering it?
Right. So, I wouldn't necessarily characterize severe. All right. So we clearly, Mr. Daniels referred to a surge in police presence in an effort to sort of bring some calm and mitigate some of the immediate tensions. And I think we need to always look at the gang problem in terms of something's gone bump in the night that needs to be resolved, and the longer term issues about how do we keep growing gang members, right? So there's two very separate issues. Clearly, criminal violence it's a crime, right? There's a police response to that, and it involves, deterring, arresting, catching, convicting, that kind of stuff. And then there's a longer term issue about what can we do in society to change the trajectory that we're on. There are societies that have lots of people, very few police, and no gang crimes. There are societies that have lots of people, lots of police, lots of money, and deeply embedded gang crimes. Right, so you just need to look at how we can change some of the trajectory. Today, we're really focused on, something has happened, catching and convicting those that are involved. And when there's a measure of calm, we definitely have to look at some of those longer term pieces.
Okay. We have a new national security minister who has his fingers on the purse string. Do the police need more money?
I have always said whenever that question comes up that nobody would say no to resources. One of the challenges that we do experience, as Mr. Daniels alluded to, in order to produce this surge capacity, we've had to stop things like training, that it's very vital for obviously the work that we do in order to maintain this surge capacity. So those are conversations that I have with the government on an ongoing basis.
And thank you for your time. I'm Jasmine Patterson from Bermuda Broadcasting. I just wanted to speak a little bit about prevention. Is there any sort of information that comes to the BPS that activity may be ramping up, or are you ever tipped off on, that violence is imminent?
All right, so the short answer to that is yes. We continually get intelligence streams that help us deploy resources, and certainly there have been. I'm definitely aware of a number of occasions where police response has changed that has helped eliminate, stop a shooting kind of incidents. We've also got members of the community police that are in the community trying to build relationships and get information so that people feel more confident to get information and they contribute directly to some of that information. So the short answer is absolutely yes.
And just going back to the number of firearms that may be on the streets, how many are currently in circulation that you're aware of?
I don't know, can you maybe?
I mean, it's constantly changing, and the thing being is to say that they're looking for new avenues to bring weapons in. But we do see, and I can say it, when we get the forensics back, we do see a correlation between shooting incidents, and they're not what we often expect. So there is a limited number of firearms circulating, but until we get the forensics results back, we can't give it definitively. We're not talking hundreds and hundreds. We're talking 10, 20, 30, those figures, not hundreds.
Thank you. And the minister recently stated about there's about 200 gang members or gang affiliates. Does that number align with your record?
So getting a definitive number on the amount of gang members that exist because the situation is fluid is, that's always a challenge. Certainly I've talked about, and then you've got this also notion of gang leader, gang member, gang associate, because people are very involved to just on the periphery. So where do you begin to count that? But I think in terms of just looking at a number, if you thought about, fine, 200 people that are more actively involved in a gang lifestyle where that's their day in and day out activity, that seems a reasonable amount of a number. And the number in terms of people that might have a propensity to use firearms is considerably lower. We're talking in the 20s, kind of a thing.
And just lastly, were either this week's victims known to police?
Maybe Stanley, you want to comment on that?
For me, I don't really like to answer this question because it makes it look as if we categorize our persons in the community. However, we are conducting our open and transparent, fair investigation, no matter who the victims are. We just want to be clear to the families of these victims that we're gonna treat them as if they were anyone. So we don't want to say that they were known to police because I think that's kind of disingenuous in this particular period because it's only been 3 days since the first victim last night was the second. Let the families mourn in peace. And we can always come back to that one, but I don't like to really answer that question in that way.
So it's pretty much a yes.
Thank you.
To ask questions. I'm not sure how the police identify the shooters. I know for a fact the incident last week, 3 o'clock in a certain location. Police respond in location, parked up, and 2 individuals, 2 bikes further through. The individuals, street knew that they were shooters. Scattered, the police never noticed it. That's one. Wednesday night, in the same area, Pembroke area, families, children, everyone scattered. And the call went out, shooters. That's how they're being identified. Everybody scattered. Are you aware of these individuals? How do you profile these individuals? And are you aware of these individuals that are riding around freely, no matter what time of day or night it is?
So without a doubt, we have a sense of who the main antagonists are involved in this kind of activity, right? And depending on the time of the day, you see 2 up on a bike with a dark visor riding through an area that has had some challenges in the past in terms of incidents, and that would warrant some additional attention. We routinely deploy armed response vehicles in the areas that are most affected by these incidents, and those officers are involved in stopping, engaging. We use Operation Vega in terms of traffic stops and traffic offenses to really disrupt and deter these individuals. So in short, yeah, we do have an idea of who these individuals are. We do have an idea of what it looks like if they're rolling through an area. We try to be in those places when we can, and we are engaging those individuals in an effort to disrupt and deter.
lastly, next week is Good Friday, and there's some activity, a couple of functions going on. I think it's next Thursday. How is that going to look for policing?
So similarly to what Mr. Daniel said for moving out this weekend, there's going to be a surge in police presence, and you can expect the same over the weekend, over that holiday weekend. Yeah.
Last night's shooting, there was a kite making event. There were children there. Do you know if there were children on the site when this happened? And if so, are there any counselling services being offered to them?
So just let me answer the counseling services. There are counseling services that are generally available in the aftermath of some of these tragic events. Were children actually there at the time? I am not sure, but I know there was a number of people around when this event took place.
Is it the case that patrons were locked in the building for some time afterwards? Could you give any detail on that?
I don't have that detail. I don't know that detail.
I didn't hear that.
Well, that's what we heard.
Any other questions, members of the media? Any final words, Commissioner?
No, I just want to take this opportunity. Well, thank you, Mr. Moreno. I just want to take this opportunity to seek the public's assistance. If you know something, please share that with us. Rest assured that you're going to see us out in full force in terms of mitigating, disrupting, deterring police activity, and looking forward to your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members of the media, for participating in this press conference, and we will have that information for you on the identity of the suspects in due course. We will email that to you.
Identity, the photograph.
Photographs, sorry.
It's actually a small video clip I've got.
Thank you.